Let this be a reminder to you all that this organization will not tolerate failure.
The side of the federal building has been blown off. Jesse?
They believe they were part of a CIA project called MK Ultra.
Just like a segment of society that is not living in reality.
In a certain sense, we're kind of a little bit more Israel's vassal state.
There are police chiefs facilitating prostitution networks.
Do you understand? It's all in your head. It's your move.
What up, everybody? Good morning. Welcome to the Morning Dump with Austin Picard from the Underclass Podcast. Oh, man, I am a few minutes late, but I'm here. So I hope everybody's doing well this morning. I'm for sure a bit tired, but I think that's just kind of a natural consequence of as far as just psychologically exhausted, emotionally as well. Whenever I come off the heels of doing one of my solo projects, I can't help myself. It takes a few days to kind of, decompress. It's an interesting feeling, but like I told Jose before, I kind of have to cultivate these dysfunctional relationships with these, very detailed investigative cases that I kind of pursue throughout my solo work. And it's an interesting process, but it inevitably led to a 4-hour episode for my most recent one. I hope you all enjoyed it, but it was something I very much was as far as it was very much unexpected to come out on the other end with that as the product. But I was still very proud of it. I hope you guys appreciate it. But anyway, I kind of thought the first thing that we should talk about this morning is probably at least mention the fact that Dan Bongino is apparently appointed as the new FBI deputy director, which kind of fits as far as I'm concerned in terms of this heavy Zionist thread weaving throughout the new administration, which is no surprise whatsoever. But yeah, it's kind of hilarious because you see him, that footage or video of him going around on Tim Pool, basically stating that the Epstein tapes were not only in Epstein's possession, but also located in certain Middle Eastern countries, refusing to acknowledge that Mossad was involved to any extent, or Israel, and not even acknowledge, but to not even mention it as a possibility, even when pressed or hard pressed in a way. I would say it was a soft press on Tim Pool, but anyway, it's still kind of hilarious that this fits in line with what I view as sort of this false transparency, manufacturing consent. It's a tool and a technique and a method that has been recycled and utilized, quite some time in the context of the power brokers and the mind war. So, yeah, to me, it's perfectly in line with the limited hangout that definitely seems to be taking place, but it's okay. Maybe real transparency will be had or achieved, but I am very skeptical. I'm not holding out too much false hope, but that's probably all I really need to say in regard to Bongino. I've just felt as if it was something that was worth mentioning, but beyond that, I feel like I'm in this area of acknowledging and understanding and realizing this comprehensive framework that's being really implemented and set into place in regard to the fourth industrial revolution, and utilizing the Delphi technique, like the Delphi method, which I talked about before. And I think it was my Agenda 21 episode. I think so. And it's really an appeal to authority, right? Like that's what the Delphi method is. And when it was developed, it's and of course, like consider as I've mentioned before, in the context of the Delphi murders, like the inherent occult connotation, involved with Delphi itself, and then having this psychological warfare technique that was basically developed by the Rand Corporation. But it's very interesting because post World War II in the 1950s, the Rand Corporation developed the Delphi method or technique. And it has been applied, of course, in many different ways, but officially defined as a structured communication technique or method relying on a panel of experts to reach a consensus and develop professional guidelines accordingly. Now, this clear appeal to authority, of course, reminds me of like Confessions of an Economic Hitman and Henry Kissinger and just the typical NGO complex that has been represented by most recently, USAID. But yeah, what's up, retards? What's up, Bubble McHua? Jose, the Bioform. How's the morning been so far? Man, I don't know. I'm just putting it together, brother. We're here. That's as far as I am concerned. That's all I know. But anyway, so the blatant appeal to authority. Henry Kissinger, of course, he's quoted essentially confessing that an expert is just someone who articulates the needs of those in power, and that couldn't be more accurate as far as how power functions. And so the Delphi method assumes that group judgments are more valid than individual judgments. Even the name itself, of course, derives from the ancient oracle of Delphi. However, many people believe that the method was actually developed as an underhanded management organizational technique with the true purpose of collectively bringing people to a predetermined outcome through the provided illusion of having a voice in crafting the outcome themselves. So, when that is kind of the foundational approach, right, as far as how they kind of, the mind manipulators really operate, it's dealing in deception as we consistently, attempt to bring to everyone's attention. But it's a very difficult prospect for me to imagine that any sort of true accountability and transparency will take place through right the confirmation and appointment of someone like Dan Bongino. But I guess in many people's minds, this is a pivot in a better direction. I understand where people are coming from in regard to just seeing some sort of change in right ideologically. That again, this is my issue. I see the ideological subversion being manipulated and exploited and leveraged as a tool at all times. And so, yeah, I'm very much skeptical of all of these appointments and confirmations. I feel as if the vast majority are either they might be good faith actors who are just being handled and directed and perfectly willing to, play that role, or they're entirely compromised by some sort of sexual blackmail or yeah, some it's just or just financially, it's really not too difficult to grasp the playbook once you've seen it so often and recycled so often. So beyond that, I would say it's probably important to point out this kind of what I referred to it as technocratic transhumanism, and I think that that's mainly because I'm really, let's see, Bobo McCoy says, I'm really curious with what Cash Patel did to get to to get to hats this administration. To get two hats this administration. Oh, okay, yeah, I feel you. Yeah, man, I don't know. Cash Patel's another one that I need to do a sort of deep dive into his background personally because I'm curious to know what his special interest connections are. I'm sure knowing about the just overrepresentation of the Peter Thiel acolytes that are surrounding the current administration. That's what I'm most concerned with is that it's just kind of once again, yeah, ATF and FBI is a weird combo. Yeah, absolutely it is, but not really. They tend to. I mean, it is for sure, but at the same time, they really seem to have similar interests. Inherently, I think those two organizations behave very similarly. I always go back to PatCon when it comes down to ATF and the FBI kind of serving, and they have mutual interests, but yeah, they're each typically over the past, and they clearly have like they're vying for funding for new presidential administrations, things of that nature. So you typically see more false flags, manufactured crises, things like that. But yeah, smoking out the Marxists, man, that's pretty optimistic. I hope that's the case, man. That would be nice, but that feels too much like it falls within the context of the culture war. And when, yeah, I honestly, man, it tends to the way that I view it is basically they're exploiting each side of the political spectrum, obviously, and so it's ultimately leading in the same dystopian technocratic direction, and that's right. What makes me so skeptical is that it doesn't matter, which public relations framework they're kind of operating in regard to who's in charge in DC and how this agenda and these benchmarks are being achieved and in what way it will is the public perceiving it. I think that that's where the pendulum swings, and that's where you know the basically the attempt to really just undermine any sort of revolutionary class whatsoever, any sort of threat by, the peasant class and the serfs. That's typically the case, right? Is that it tends to be just a way to, again, fall within the ideological subversion, right? To manufacture that consent directly, and so then you have this misunderstanding and misconception where people are viewing it as if they are actually getting what they voted for, as I mentioned yesterday. And it provides this sort of, limited hangout and misinterpretation, right, of true accountability. But hey man, no problem. Let me know, hit me up, DM me, we'll have a conversation. I'll come on. I would love to have a conversation with you. But um, yeah, it's always falling in the realm of moving the agenda forward, and so it doesn't matter which side of the political spectrum achieves which benchmark items because they're still pursuing these mutual interests. And so again, it's just very frustrating because I see a lot of false hope and when people consistently target truth seekers by labeling them as black pilled for kind of just pointing out the reality of the fact that the Stargate project and Trump partnering with just totalitarian technocrats and promoting transhumanist eugenics policies in regard to really the bird flu, right? The avian H5N1, the all this, what amounts to a manufactured crisis. I think the poultry crisis itself has been clearly manufactured, especially since you can go back to really basically the bird flu being created out of a lab in poultry diagnostic research center, and then being released or leaked, very much like the COVID playbook. So it just fits perfectly, um, especially since right, you can witness what is being ushered through as kind of facilitated as a result, which really inevitably becomes these dystopian biosecurity measures, right? Which and mRNA vaccines for poultry, which that's another thing people need to understand is right, really attempting to be ushered in is this sort of what new biosecurity measures, dystopian, of course, ushered in as a solution to the government created poultry culling crisis in response to the government created bird flu. So, once again, we have problem reaction solution at its best. Another perfect example. And yeah, I just, when you witness them, you have officials who are even claiming within the administration, right, that this will lead to a biosecurity smart perimeter, and these they're legitimately telling us, just out and out, they're admitting and confessing these agenda items. It's just, again, it's sort of this occult framework of giving you the rope to hang yourself. If you don't notice it, if you don't acknowledge the problem, then you can't ever address it with any proper solution. And that's typically where we find ourselves. It's kind of having we're in this mental state, this psychological state where we're consistently at odds with our ideological opponents, exploiting and leveraging the political puppets against each other, as if the political theater is has any real actual, in my mind. I think it's all just to pacify, right, the vast majority of the population at all times by viewing a plausible representative, right? Actually embracing plausible representatives in DC as if they have your best interest at heart, at any extent. And in reality, it turns out that most people are just content with feeling as if they had some sort of ideological victory in the moment, right? And yeah, I just, what is the point in that? No long term, no long term positive consequences will be, come as a result of such a kind of a low frequency perspective on how to even approach power brokers, and really just how the state is structured. And that's the other thing, is that I don't believe in using the state as a tool. I'm ideologically opposed to the state philosophically in every way, and so I find no morality. I think it's immoral, honestly, to even attempt to have control over your neighbor's lifestyle, as long as it's not affecting you in some sort of illegal way, and in illegal in regard to, like, basic fundamental core values, meaning like the non-aggression principle, or right, theft of property. Then clearly, if you're not violating those basic core, you know tenets of reality itself and how you function as a human being, um then yeah, I think it's just a huge mistake, right? And so here we go, right? Yeah, objective morality and natural law. I just, honestly, man, like, it is always a mistake to deal in the terms that they hand us, right? And that is exactly what it is. It's a trap, basically. Really, not only the ideological trap, but just the mental perspective and approach in general of how you deal with reality itself. Um, it's that in itself, we're at an inherent disadvantage, and that is by design. So when you see Moderna receiving $500 million from Health and Human Services for mRNA-based bird flu vaccines last year, right? And then you see, right, well, why the hell is the FDA under the new Trump administration approving the use of mRNA bird flu vaccines for chickens. Okay, not only that, as far as you have Moderna apparently working on separate mRNA bird flu vaccines for humans, of course, and knowing Operation Warp Speed and Trump's past as far as um, just falling in line with the AI uh, biometric dystopian health. It's like to not understand that we are heading in the direction of what really amounts to the AI healthcare revolution, and Palantir is kind of steering it, right? In many ways, these teal linked, biotech companies, and you can really isolate and identify, their true agenda here, and it seems to be reshaping the public health system, but not in any sort of positive way for the public, right? And it seems much more to be in line with more AI transhumanism and mRNA injections, which, yeah, I mean that's eugenics, man. It's modern eugenics policies, and people are very unaware of how really the hidden hand of eugenics and how very much it's been a part of the history of not only the United States but all of really the modern world. Like it was ushered through off of the back of dystopian eugenics policies that you could never even imagine, including in America itself. And so yeah, they're dealing with the Delphi method. So we all are under this false impression that we're under this illusion that we have a voice in crafting this outcome, and that's why democracy, the god that failed, right? It's very much just this collectivist poison, and it's intended to, yeah, to placate that revolutionary class. And yeah, I just again, it's very much something that it's hard for me. I struggle often in not grasping why it's so difficult for people to finally get to that point. And once it seems as if the vast majority are dragging their feet by claiming this false sense of, you know, um, it's really just as if you're claiming that the only reason we shouldn't address the realistic structure of the as far as the power paradigm we're living in, yeah, if it's, I mean, how is it not, I don't know, it's just very difficult for me to accept the black pill label when you're dealing in reality. So Jose, what's up, brother? Hit the like button, homos. Yeah, for sure. But hello from Australia. What's up, Adam, Tom, Bobby? How you doing, my friend? Oh man. Anyway, I don't know. I'm rambling. I'm just talking about whatever is in my mind at the moment. So, but what I do think we should discuss is that a little bit more on the bird flu, and then we'll kind of make a pivot. But to understand that you have these companies who are getting these 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 Pentagon contracts and and defense contracts and State Department contracts. You have Moderna continuing to make hundreds of millions of dollars from this apparently development of these vaccines for this avian flu H5N1 allegedly, and another reason is apparently what you're seeing is Trump's plans for big changes to fight the bird flu as egg prices rise, apparently. And reading through some of the other than U.S. awarding Moderna $500 million to develop the vaccine, you also have kind of first of all, the U.S. egg industry sees record deaths for chickens from the bird flu outbreak, which again, this is a manufactured crisis, and it's kind of interesting too because this is very much within the context of you know technocratic transhumanism because the mRNA injections themselves, perfectly fall in line with we are compromising the food supply now, right? And so that will affect all of us. But let's see here. Let me pull up one of these articles that I had ready to go. White House initiates new strategy to combat bird flu. All right. Um, Also, if you guys, I'm sure you guys are aware of Peter McCullough, right? Dr. Peter McCullough during COVID. He definitely came on my radar, and and he's really a brilliant guy. I definitely enjoy listening to his kind of interpretations of the medical landscape at the time. But yeah, listen to kind of what his take is. At least it's just very brief. But he had gone on and he's essentially discussing culling poultry as an ineffective and costly biosecurity measure, of course. Man, Think Change Repeat says, Austin, what are your thoughts on why mRNA is so important to the technocrats? I think it is. It's transhumanism. It's the eugenics aspect of it. And if you can legitimately, you know, um, if you can use this technology to affect a human DNA structure, then I mean, we already know that it has much more capability. I remember when this was first coming across the radar publicly, and it came in the form of like the Chinese CRISPR technology. I think that was it. And yeah, it was very much like the inevitable result would be we can basically have designer babies. We could even kind of you could make your decision as parents going in. I would like to customize my baby to be a certain height, certain like it's kind of insane how much you can apparently accomplish within that framework. And so I do think that there's some sort of you know it has to do with pairing. It's bridging the what must be the brain implants, right? Like the Neuralink coming as far as like coming around the corner in the near future. I feel like these these Neuralink yeah, it is par for the course lately. Definitely is. But I mean, it's the ability to patent on a person's genome. Exactly, man. And yeah, they're already attempting to you know, I mean, you look at BlackRock and Larry Fink and their goals are exactly in line with kind of, you know, basically creating like natural assets, like and again, like natural asset corridors are already in the blueprint for the dystopian Agenda 21 future, which is very interesting when you read into kind of what they're hoping to accomplish in the sustainable development paradigm. And so once you look into that, you realize that the vision is that half the land area of the entire country will be designated wilderness areas where only wildlife managers and researchers will be allowed. Those areas will be interconnected by corridors of wilderness, the wilderness corridors, to allow migration of wildlife without interference by human activity. Now, surrounding those wilderness areas and corridors, designated buffer zones will be managed for conservation objectives. The primary objective is restoration and rehabilitation. Rehabilitation involves the repair of damaged ecosystems, while restoration usually involves the reconstruction of natural or semi natural ecosystems. As areas are restored and rehabilitated, they are added to the wilderness designation, and the buffer zone is extended outward. Buffer zones are surrounded by what is called zones of cooperation. This is the 15-minute smart city infrastructure, right? This is where people live in sustainable communities. Sustainable communities are defined by strict urban growth boundaries. Land outside the growth boundaries will be managed by government agencies, which grant permits for activities deemed to be essential and sustainable. Open space to provide a view shed and sustainable recreation for community residents will abut the urban boundaries. Beyond the viewshed, sustainable agricultural activities will be permitted to support the food requirements of nearby communities. Sustainable communities of the future will bear little resemblance to the towns and cities of the 20th century. Single family homes will be rare. Housing will be provided by public private partnerships funded by government and managed by non government homeowners associations. Get the fuck out of here. Housing units will be designed to provide most of the infrastructure and amenities required by the residents. Shops and office space will be an integral part of each unit, and housing will be allocated on a priority basis to people who work in the unit, with quotas to achieve ethnic and economic balance. Interesting. So yeah, it's this is how you achieve those goals, right? Is you begin to manufacture crises in regard to the food supply. That's one way, and that has clearly been a goal of the Peter Thiel acolytes that I mentioned earlier. Is they were attempting, it was OpenAI or Carbine 911, but one of them, they were attempting to basically, let me see if I can find it. But either way, it's very interesting because once you realize that they have this very clear and obvious goal, to achieve this full control, full spectrum dominance, as we've mentioned many times, but full control of the food supply, and also to compromise us at the base level, right? Just as far as public health is concerned in general, this is right, the revolving door into big pharma, right? So if you can damage the food supply, what other example do we need as far as like the class warfare at play? It's so very obvious. There's a the elite oligarchs and their children, they have access to the best schooling institutions. They're of course private. They have access to the best food supply, right? Obviously, it's a lot more healthy, I would imagine, and we're left with the compromised poison that is intended to undermine our quality of life. And I think that is just ultimately not even, yeah, fuck the HOAs. Oh man. Yeah, but anyway, it's very interesting that that this is kind of, as far as ushering through, as far as the bird flu, it's interesting that it's ushering through these dystopian biosecurity measures, which are implementing this new AI infrastructure, which is again this, right, the new the Stargate project, basically. But yeah, I haven't watched this of McCullough, but let's listen to what he has to say.
It rarely transmits from animal to humans. We should let the farms, the chickens and the cows all develop natural immunity because they're continually reinfected by migratory mallard ducks and waterfowl. The practice of culling is hopeless. All it's doing, as Carolyn Levitt, the new White House press secretary, said, is raising the cost of poultry and eggs.
Well, yeah. That is crazy. And now listen to Kevin Hassett, director, right? This is so ridiculous because they always tell us outright what their goals are. They just always have to couch the dystopian goals in these in these very romanticized terms. But
I just went to the grocery store. I shop for our family in part because I love to look at prices. And there were no eggs at the store yesterday, just a few. And so that happened because they killed all the chickens. And so what we need to do is have better ways with biosecurity and medication and so on to make sure that the perimeter doesn't have to kill the chickens. Have a better, smarter perimeter. And so having a smart perimeter is what we're working on. And we're finalizing the ideas about how to do that with the best scientists in government. And that's the kind of thing that should have happened a year ago. And if it had, then egg prices would be, a lot better than they are now. But the avian flu is a real thing. And by the way, it's spread mostly by ducks and geese. And so think about it, they're killing chickens to stop the spread, but chickens don't really fly. The spread is happening from the geese and the ducks. And so why does it make any sense to have a big perimeter of dead chickens when it's the ducks and the geese that are spreading it?
Well, the Department of Agriculture policy has been to kill those chickens, as you know, but we'll watch for the details.
Just went to the grocery.
all right, it is. This is kind of crazy because it's not only was. Oh wait, we have one more McCullough clip. Hold on. And by the way, FFS, thank you so much, man. Supremely appreciate Austin's latest research video. Videos like that are gold for the ages. A plus, my brother. Thank you so much, man. I do hope you guys enjoyed it. It was something that I wasn't even on my radar as far as the Jeffrey McDonald case until I was researching Fort Bragg, and the Fort Bragg murders just dropped into my lap, and then I discovered the instant connection to the Manson murders, and it just kind of rocked my world. And by the way, we should talk about that in just a moment. Yeah, I'll bring up potential motives, alternative motives for the Sharon Tate murder. Okay, because that will actually be a fun segue. But one more video. I want to see if this is worth watching. But I honestly, man. Oh, and by the way, guys, in the context of the wildfires in Los Angeles, we should definitely discuss Karen Bass as well at some point. The mayor who preemptively defended her trip to Ghana when she went to Africa, and was sending cryptic messages before the fires even began, right? Which were an out and out acknowledgement of the upcoming tragedy that was about to take place, as if she was perfectly aware of the upcoming event. So it's very strange, but there's a bit more to that story. But again, that falls into the right, the smart city rebuild, the Klaus Schwab's vision for Los Angeles 2028. But yeah, egg prices, they're not an accident, right? The bird flu, of course, is being blamed for the egg prices, but H5N1 is just a virus that affects birds and sometimes spreads to mammals, but basically it's a lab modified strain that has apparently it leaked by the year 2022. And this is the excuse to seize control of food production. That's basically the goal. And so they're using the tactics that perfectly align with the COVID playbook by PCR testing to inflate the case counts, mass culling of the healthy poultry, rapid vaccine rollouts by big pharma. And of course, there's really no consequence whatsoever in a positive way for the public. We continue to see soaring egg prices. So you have fewer chickens, of course, so higher egg and meat prices. And hey, man, I appreciate you, brother. Adam, Tom, Bobby. But pharmakia, is that how you pronounce that, screwed up Texas? Pharmakia in Greek literally means sorcery or witchcraft. Man, not surprised. That really is. It's right. People are yeah, it's what was the earliest form of big pharma? You know what I mean? It's yeah, it's very interesting. People don't kind of acknowledge that more often, but Anyway, so now we have vaccine-laced food supply, right? Where you lose control over everything you eat. And that is truly what I think is potentially a goal, right? And what happens if you have an mRNA, right, based food supply? If this sounds familiar, it's no coincidence, says this doctor. COVID lockdowns were about limiting personal freedom. Bird flu outbreaks are about limiting access to food. Control over food equals control over every part of human life. Man, it's not far off. Yeah, this is really, I mean, this is not public health, man. You know what I mean? This is definitely an agenda. And so let's see if we have anything else worthwhile on this topic, and then we'll kind of make a pivot. But yeah, it's of course you have to remember, man, like if Moderna has this much money involved with the bird flu vaccine, um, then yeah, it's probably more than likely going to consistently reappear to at least provide some sort of lucrative, financial benefit to the companies who are involved. So that's yeah, more often than not, that's exactly what the agenda is. So, yep, let's see one last video of Macola potentially, and then we'll move on. Calm down, Macola.
It's going to be worse. What do you expect to come?
It's game on for gain of function bird flu. That is disease X. Gavi called it the Global Vaccine Alliance. They were right. Bird flu is disease X. It's been around for decades. It has a mortality rate about 52% in over 800 cases. That's in years past, no ICU care, very late presentations, undernourished people. It's a different game now in humans. We've got antivirals, antibiotics. We shouldn't lose a single case, but we now have a human case reported today in Michigan, or one in Australia, previously one in Texas, one in Colorado. We haven't seen human-to-human spread, but it's clearly spreading animal-to-human. There's animal outbreaks now all over. We learned that it's gain-of-function research, CLADE, which is the original source 23446. It's coming out of the USDA Athens, Georgia Poultry Research Center.
Wow.
And I tell you, it's a man-made problem. They tried to do gain-of-function research through serial passage. They got it into mallard ducks. There must have been some ducks that escaped. And now it's game on for bird flu. I predict
Dude,
this
what?
is going to create a lot of constraints in the food supply. They're going to end up culling animals, unnecessarily destroying chickens and cattle. They can just let them get through it, get natural immunity, but they don't want to do that. I predict they're going to mass vaccinate the animals, which the U.S. has refrained on because it makes it worse.
Mass vaccinate the animals. Does that not sound exactly like the same exact story that in regard to HIV and Dr. Mary's monkey? Read that book, because that is actually absolutely, yeah, the totally reliable PCR. Hey man, was it Carrie Mullis, Dr. Carrie Mullis, that was the inventor of the PCR? Who that video exists of him talking mad shit on Dr. Fauci, right? Saying that he's just this government bureaucrat that's been utilized to, efficiently exploit the American public in regard to public health in general, let alone, really leverage propaganda to benefit and line the pockets of specifically of certain, organizations within the that landscape of receiving these government contracts, right, in the health industry. And then Fauci himself is just kind of put in charge of really kind of promoting the agenda, which will then usher in the money flow, and then directing the money flow to, right, the lucrative money flow to the the organizations that are aligned perfectly within the mutual interests of the agenda itself. So that is what Fauci does, right? He's just kind of like a mob figure that gets tapped into to play his role. And man, it's just yeah, exactly. He died conveniently before COVID started. Yep, and he could not stand Anthony Fauci, but I think he even won the Nobel Prize or something for the PCR, or maybe he just won the Nobel Prize. I can't remember, but I think it was for creating the PCR, but it was for some other entirely different purpose. Trying to recall exactly what it was for. It's been a while. I'm a little rusty on my COVID research, but um yeah, they're all actors when you get when you get right down to 100%. That's definitely how I feel, my friend. But yep. So Moderna, of course, $590 million. They're developing this bird flu vaccine, and then you have this new White House plan to combat the bird flu. And I think that's probably the last thing that we'll read in regard to that. But let me pull it up for you guys because it's at least worthwhile to acknowledge the fact that there is a plan in place and it's being ushered in. And yeah, essentially, bird flu vaccine conditionally approved for use in chickens. Will it hatch new risks? Last week, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, let's see, this is the recent one. Yeah. This is just from a few days ago on the 19th. Last week, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, under newly appointed Secretary Brooke Rollins, granted a conditional license for Zoetis, I'm not sure, avian influenza vaccine for use in chickens. I think the Zoetis or Zoetis, I'm not sure. It's definitely a company that's developing this avian vaccine. But according to Zoetis, the USDA's Center for Veterinary Biologics, oh my God, CVB, issued the license based on the vaccine's safety, purity, and reasonable expectation of efficacy as demonstrated through serology data or blood tests measuring immune response. However, this is a conditional license. The vaccine, officially named avian influenza vaccine H5N2 subtype killed virus, has not yet undergone full-scale field trials to prove its long-term effectiveness. Dude, this just what the fuck? This is legitimately the Peter Thiel-linked HHS nominee threatening the ambitions of the Make America Healthy Again agenda with biotech, with their biotech approach, according to Max Jones. And yeah, when we looked into the Peter Thiel associate Jim O'Neill, who is apparently attempting to usher in this deregulatory paradigm that would allow a proliferation of dubious products on the U.S. market under the guise of innovation and efficiency. Fuck that, right? Department of Government Efficiency. When the fuck has the government ever been efficient, you guys? Like, can we get past that? It's hilarious. Once again, I get it, and it makes me happy to witness, at the very least, any sort of pivot to cutting spending at any level. I appreciate spending being cut, but is it being cut, or is it truly just being redistributed, as we realized is the case when it boils down to what Hegseth just said and the Pentagon? I mean, absolutely not. There will never be military budget cuts. They will just redistribute that money, your money, the taxpayer dollars, to whatever new agenda, dystopian agenda that they want to usher in at our own peril. And yeah, the only way to make the government efficient is to get rid of the government. What's up, Jacob? What's up, Rise to Liberty? Go listen to his podcast, man. He's the homie. He's cool as hell. But he had great work on, man, the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. But anyway, we got to have a conversation again soon, my brother. But beyond that, that's what it reminds me of, right? Because you have the business connections of Jim O'Neill, right? Who's right deputy director, I believe, of HHS, deputy secretary. Yeah, yeah, with RFK Jr. And so, you know, he clearly is he advocates for reforming the FDA to deregulate and accelerate the pathway from drug development to legalization, and that is exactly what we were just reading about in regard to this Operation Warp Speed, if you will, H5N2 vaccine. This would notably aid the biotech industry, which has long struggled to get its products approved outside of an emergency-based regulatory paradigm. That is it. So that's another again, man. Since when do they not, pursue layered objectives within the operations? Like that is always a part of it. They're not only attempting to achieve one goal. There, there's a layered approach to the goals they're willing to pursue and achieve and hope to achieve, and it's typically it factors in almost everything you could imagine. I would think that with the long-standing kind of psychological approach to the ideological subversion, this would have been so sophisticated by now. So yeah, anyway, um, well, yeah, we'll finish a little bit more of this New American article on this new approach to the avian flu, but the poultry crisis. Oh my god, I just got a alert that apparently my Rumble stream was just deleted, so hopefully that's not true. But anyway, it's whatever. If it has, then my bad, guys. I don't know why. But we'll figure that out. So, which by the way, that was another thing I saw. Like, wasn't the creator or the CEO or executive of at Rumble? I think he was present as one of Peter Thiel's acolytes there with the confirmations of everyone involved there with the new administration. It's just kind of crazy to me. You realize that Larry Fink and BlackRock are basically the god emperor of the new world order in a certain way at this point, with just how many different assets involved. But anyway, it that's a whole nother conversation. But so it looks as if this was only considered to be a conditional license for this avian influenza vaccine, but yeah, conditional approval allows limited use of the vaccine during an emergency. Emergency use, man. Authorization. Did we not see this coming? Was COVID not a precedent-setting operation? The USDA declared an emergency response to the highly pathogenic avian influenza outbreak on February 8th, 2022, following the first confirmed case in a commercial flock. So that was after the leak took place and transpired. So shift from culling to vaccination. Here we go. So now we get right. Problem, reaction, solution, man. Like you manufacture a crisis. Of course, this would be the shift from culling to vaccination with, as far as I'm concerned, the way that the media has spotlighted this on each side of the political aisle. They're achieving exactly what they hope. And that is what's so interesting to me. Let's see. Think Change Repeat says this is what Amazing Polly has pointed out, that the alternative media is the new MSM, and there is a pipeline to the Wellness Company, the Wellness Co., and all of those involved with Teal. Absolutely, man. Yep. Yeah, and so exact figures for cold birds are not specified. But let's see. For years, the USDA has relied on mass culling as its primary response to HPAI. I think that's the the highly pathogenic avian influenza. outbreaks, HPAI, as as of the latest update from the USDA, as cited by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, since February 2022, over 160 million birds have been affected. Exact figures for culled birds are not specified. However, culling has been a standard response to HPAI outbreaks to control and contain the virus. That means that a significant portion of those affected birds has been slaughtered. The Trump administration's decision to approve Zoetis's vaccine signals a pivot in the federal response. National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett collaborates with the USDA on the response as he told Face the Nation, the new plan will focus on biosecurity and medication, as well as targeted containment methods. Culling is widely regarded as an ineffective measure since wild birds, such as mallard ducks, continue to reinfect chickens. Vaccines do not eliminate this risk, and they introduce new concerns. Oh my God. Avian influenza vaccines have been available for years, yet American farmers have largely avoided using them. The reasons were a combination of trade restrictions, logistical challenges. Let's see. Oh, nice. What's up, Rise to Liberty? Thank you for the kind words, brother. We most definitely need to have another discussion soon. I'm working on a big story that is pretty mind-blowing. I'll send you the thread when it's done. Awesome, man. Looking forward to it. Let's see. The reasons were a combination of trade restrictions. So avian influenza vaccines have been available for years, yet American farmers have largely avoided using them. The reasons were a combination of trade restrictions, logistical challenges, and concerns about viral mutation and cross-species transmission. Vaccines are a standard tool in combating poultry diseases. However, HPAI vaccination has been controversial and rarely implemented on a large scale. One of the biggest reasons U.S. poultry farmers have avoided vaccination is international trade policy. Many countries, including China and the European Union, ban poultry imports from nations that vaccinate against avian influenza. Man, the concern, what? Oh my God. That's amazing. So the concern is that vaccinated birds can still carry and spread the virus asymptomatically. Dude, what is going on that makes it harder to detect and control outbreaks? If the U.S. poultry industry widely adopted vaccination, it could risk losing access to billions of dollars in export revenue. The U.S. broiler industry plays a major role in the global poultry market, exporting much of its production each year. Between 2013 and 2022, about 17% of U.S. chicken production was sent to other countries, making it the most export-focused poultry product. In 2024, U.S. poultry meat exports, excluding eggs, were worth around $5.53 billion, with an average of $5.6 billion over the past 3 years. This highlights how much the industry depends on international trade and how import exports are to and how important exports are to its economic success. That's very interesting. All right. Well, we don't have to, but it does say potential for driving mutations, logistical and cost barriers. I mean, this is clearly a very consequential pivot in regard to the typical approach, the status quo, concerning just the response to the avian flu. So, yeah, this seems very much like it falls within the agenda of controlling the food supply. Yeah, there's definitely more, I would say, of a layered agenda here that we're not, fully read in on, obviously, and can't acknowledge each factor involved. But here we go. Here we go. Oh my God! We just discussed this with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. now leading HHS. It remains to be seen whether this strategy will continue unchanged. It may be adjusted or even canceled. The concern arises from the influence of biotech investor Jim O'Neill, the Peter Thiel acolyte, Kennedy's deputy and key operational lead at HHS, who has long advocated for deregulating drug approvals and accelerating vaccine development. His stance could either create tension within the department of or quietly steer policy in a direction at odds with Kennedy's stated commitment to stricter oversight. Boom. There you go. There you go, man. Like that's just fascinating. I don't really know what else to say about that, but biosecurity heavy approach is in the near future, man. Very, very startling, as far as the potential reality we're facing here. So, I think that's the last of it. There was one. Let's see, was this a recent one? Yeah, 3 days ago, there was a BBC article. Farmers say bird flu a crisis as egg prices soar. And for Brian Craher, a fourth-generation farmer in the small town of Clarence, New York, the latest outbreak of bird flu has meant many sleepless nights. All right, clearly we could spend the rest of the time just talking about bird flu. But yeah, one last point as far as this public health kind of factor. I came across this. It was a January article, like mid-January. Max Jones wrote this article that was published on Unlimited Hangout, Whitney Webb's publication. And it says the CDC, Palantir, and the AI healthcare revolution. And it discusses the CDC's Center for Forecasting and Outbreak Analytics has partnered with the CIA-linked Palantir to cement the public-private model of invasive surveillance in public health, all while pushing the U.S. national security state and Silicon Valley even closer together. The Pentagon and Silicon Valley are in the midst of cultivating an even closer relationship as the Department of Defense and big tech companies seek to jointly transform the American healthcare system into one that is artificial intelligence AI driven. The alleged advantages of such a system, espoused by the Army itself, big tech and pharma executives, as well as intelligence officers, would be unleashed by the rapidly developing power of so-called predictive medicine. My God. Let's see. I might as well share it with you while we're going through it for just a moment. And then we'll pivot. So, man, predictive medicine, or a branch of medicine that aims to identify patients at risk of developing a disease, thereby enabling either prevention or early treatment of that disease. This will apparently be achieved via mass interagency data sharing between the Department of Defense, the Department of Health, and HHS, and the private sector. In other words, the military and intelligence communities, as well as the public and private sector elements of the U.S. healthcare system, are working closely with big tech to predict diseases and treat them before they occur, and even before symptoms are felt, for the purported purposes of improving civilian and military healthcare. So, this cross-sector team plans to deliver this transformation of the healthcare system by first utilizing and sharing the DoD's healthcare data set, which is the most comprehensive in the world. It seems, however, based on the programs that already utilize the predictive approach and the necessity for machine learning and the development of AI technology, that this partnership would also massively expand the breadth of this healthcare data set through an array of technologies, methods, and sources. Yet, if the actors and institutions involved in lobbying for and implementing this system indicate anything, it appears that another, if not primary, purpose of this push towards a predictive AI healthcare infrastructure is the resurrection of a Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, managed and Central Intelligence Agency supported program that Congress officially shelved decades ago. The program, Total Information Awareness, was a post 9/11 pre-crime operation which sought to use mass surveillance to stop terrorists before they committed any crimes through collaborative data mining efforts between the public and private sector. There you go. Pre-crime, total information awareness. Yeah, we've discussed TIA before. It came up within the context of DARPA's LifeLog project. All right, and yeah, yeah. What do you think all these social media platforms were designed to achieve? So here we are, in the midst of the mind war, and we're surrounded on all sides, and we got to stop viewing these political puppets as an alternative solution, or a viable solution, plausible in any way, in regard to really holding the current system accountable and changing things, ultimately, in some sort of long-term fashion. No, man, like we need to wake up to this reality, and there's nothing, I think that once we've officially achieved that, just the ability of assessing reality for what it is, and again acknowledging and identifying our common enemies, that is when we can finally discuss right, a viable solution of any kind. And otherwise, we're pitted against each other at odds, unable to agree on the most basic fundamental facts of life. Well, what happens then? Like, I just these individuals are all members of exclusive fraternal clubs, powerful influence, man, and they don't have our best interest at heart. That is the way of the world, and it's unfortunate, but there's optimism in discovering the truth. That's what I view. I view, objective truth seeking, as I said before, as the divine path. You find God in the truth, man. You really do. And I truly think that it's a hard road, you know. I'm always attempting to kind of realign myself, not be as affected by the propaganda, but it's heavy, it's deep, you know. We've been at this inherent disadvantage for far too long. Let's see. A lot of this AI stuff is being tested and rolled out in my state. We have massive contracts. This is Utah, floating between military, big tech, and defense contractors. Utah is the epicenter. Man, Utah, there's something strange going on in Utah. I know that. Same with like Michigan. It's yeah, very interesting, but yeah, Utah is wild. I think Utah has the direct connection to best friends and the process, you know, the new modern chapters of the Process Church, basically the new modern organization in its new form, basically. But anyway, so it looks like Palantir is spurring an AI health care revolution, biometric centric pre-crime minority report styled, which yes, we should have known. But anyway, beyond I guess now we can finally make the pivot away from public health and kind of discuss, at least let me mention, because I didn't put in the title Gaza 2035, I should at least mention a little foreign policy update. And then finally, I'll discuss a little bit more about Sharon Tate, and then we'll get out of here. But I appreciate you guys letting me go schizo. Some mornings I feel like my mind is in a fog, and other mornings I feel like my mind is working efficient and effectively, and my I can achieve some sort of flow state with the terminology that I utilize. But yeah, some days I'm a little slower than normal. But anyway, I appreciate you all for being here as always, man. But if hopefully you found this strange, bird flu agenda kind of fusing together the playbook or the COVID playbook and ushering through these new dystopian biosecurity measures. Yeah, I can't imagine that someone wouldn't find that fascinating. But but anyway, let's see. What do we have? We have like I mentioned earlier, of course, you have the Pentagon claiming that Hegseth's order will, of course, only redirect spending, not make actual budget cuts. And then you had another antiwar.com report that claimed European military chiefs proposed sending 30,000 troops to Ukraine, right? And that was only a couple days ago, which in the as far as the negotiation tactics, this is we're currently in the midst of, allegedly, we're in the midst of an attempted negotiation between Zelensky and Russia and the US, of course. But hey, JMS, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you very much. But yeah, it looks like more security guarantees, are being offered up, and it makes sense. I mean, this is a boondoggle. This is what Ukraine was designed to be in this proxy force era, you know, and just knowing how they operate, as far as the lizard people like Victoria Nuland staging these coups d'etats for so long with the color revolutions. Um, I just I find it fascinating that, once again, you can't just get out of a conflict when it boils down to, I mean, you can, but they never do, right? And that is just par for the course once again, man. I view something very, I would say, a very cataclysmic, consequential foreign policy pivot to some extent in the near future. And I think that might be in regard to really Israel's interests with Iran, but also knowing that, Israeli's finance minister, Smotrich, was just talking about Trump's ethnic cleansing plan for Gaza restarting within weeks. I mean, it's very obvious. Like, this is a return to ethnic cleansing, and this is a genocidal policy. And I've mentioned before already that obviously, there's proposals for these redevelopment plans, for Gaza post military conflict, and it looks very, just extraordinarily tragic as far as the blueprint, especially considering the document that outlines the redevelopment proposals. It was published and shows Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plans to redevelop Gaza following the ongoing conflict that is set, of course, seen the majority of the buildings in the region damaged by Israeli strikes. On that note, of course, I've mentioned you have Jared Kushner's connection to the real estate redevelopment plans in regard to the Gaza plan, and he apparently has been a key prominent, proponent of the, Trump's Gaza policy. So before I continue with that, actually, it's kind of interesting that I discovered this. It's an older article from a couple of years ago, but it says it's kind of it predicts this future technocratic 15-minute smart city infrastructure replacement post-military conflict, and it basically says Palestine, peace to prosperity through technocracy, and it's extraordinary. What's up, Rachel? Thank God we get Austin. Thank you. I think you guys are talking about Austin, Texas, but I'll take it. But so expanding on plans first laid during the Trump administration, Israel's government and military, aided by Silicon Valley billionaires, seek to build back better in Gaza after the current conflict installing a technocracy that is likely already being augmented globally through the weaponization of buzzwords like decentralization or financial freedom. Thank you, Rachel. She says, no, talking about you, homie. um, so this is an interesting one. I'll share this one with you guys too. Peace to prosperity through technocracy. Just imagine that. The Palestinian population is intimately familiar with how new technological innovations are first weaponized against them, ranging from electric fences and unmanned drones to trap people in Gaza to the facial recognition software monitoring Palestinians in the West Bank. Groups like Amnesty International have called Israel an automated apartheid and repeatedly highlight stories, testimonies, and reports about cyber intelligence firms, including the infamous NSO Group, the Israeli surveillance company behind the Pegasus software, conducting field tests and experiments on Palestinians. When discussing Gaza or the West Bank, it's critical to understand that Israel's achievements in AI and overall technological edge is perpetuated by the use of drones or unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, and other warfare technologies that are first tested in Palestine and the occupied territories before being exported abroad. Reports have highlighted testing and development of AI surveillance and predictive policing systems in Palestinian territories. In the occupied West Bank, Israel increasingly utilizes facial recognition technology to monitor and regulate the movement of Palestinians. Israeli military leaders described AI as a significant force multiplier, allowing the IDF to use autonomous robotic drone swarms to gather surveillance data, identify targets, and streamline wartime logistics. The Palestinian towns and villages near Israeli settlements have been described as laboratories for security solutions companies to experiment their technologies on Palestinians before marketing them to places like Colombia, India, and Mexico. Since at least 2012, NSO Group's controversial surveillance products, which allow users to penetrate any cell phone without the target's awareness, have been public knowledge. The debates around privacy and owning your data seem rather asinine, considering all of the open source information pertaining to the Intel Management Engine's backdoor capabilities or its memory sinkhole vulnerabilities. It's also worth noting that Intel, a California-based tech juggernaut, considers itself an Israeli company as much as a U.S. company. My God. Well, a recent article on The Intercept asserts that since NSO Group was blacklisted by the U.S. Department of Commerce in 2021, their recent effort to aid the Israeli government in finding Israeli citizens in Gaza seems like an attempt to rehabilitate its image in this crisis. While it's positive that The Intercept is highlighting NSO Group's attempt to rebuild its public image, the nature of the alleged blunder itself is worth questioning, considering Hamas was able to charge into Tel Aviv. Oh my gosh. Get out of here. Supposedly embedded with a myriad of sophisticated surveillance software and devices. Yeah, for sure. They were supposedly allowed, Hamas was able to charge into Tel Aviv by slashing through the barricades at a border that's supposedly embedded with a myriad of sophisticated surveillance software and devices, including NSO's Pegasus spyware. Israel is assumed to have one of, if not the most advanced border surveillance system with cameras and ground motion sensors. Additionally, Pegasus is presumed to be one of the Israeli tech sector's most highly sought-after products that's been sold to intelligence and law enforcement agencies around the world. My God. That is very interesting. So we'll finish up here and then we'll move on. But according to the Washington Post article, Hamas fighters neutralized long-range cameras, sophisticated sensors, and remote control weapons, a tactic known inside the group as the blinding plan to breach the high-tech fence. The Post reconstructed the attack by analyzing hundreds of videos and photos posted online, including visuals filmed on October 7 and during preparations by Hamas fighters. Anyway, it's yeah, it's oh wow, okay. Trump's peace to prosperity woes a Jared Kushner's Bahrain blowout. Interesting. All right. So it does seem like this peace to prosperity through technocracy, utilizing these public-private partnerships, and also Jared Kushner's role. I mean, he's very deeply involved in all of this, and not at all surprised considering his connections to special interest groups, and George Soros of all people. But I have a military document that explains exactly how to change Utah's culture of anti-authoritarianism. It's exactly what they're doing. Every other state has signed up to do what we're doing. Interesting. Well, let's see. That's probably going to do it for this. Well, I guess I could a couple more on the Gaza plan. I definitely think that knowing, by the way, just a foreign policy update, that we have Republican lawmakers demanding a consistent forward projection to contain Russia and China, right? And essentially demanding a larger military budget, far more significant, which shouldn't surprise you considering that you have all of this propaganda out there claiming that we're seeing these massive military budget cuts or something. But it looks as if all these false flags happening in Israel at this moment seem to be an attempt at undermining any sort of negotiation. And so that was, of course, by design and the plan of Netanyahu from the beginning. But still, it's important to point out the fact that these bus explosions near Israel's Tel Aviv, and also the captives being sacrificed, it's really all within the framework of more propaganda to manufacture the consent for the upcoming ethnic cleansing. And that is what it's par for the course, man. We see it. How many times, do we need to see this before we finally come to terms with the fact that Netanyahu, and not just Netanyahu, but they're never dealing in good faith in regard to their policies on Palestine. And I don't understand how anybody could question that, honestly, as being the case. But yeah, so you have the hostage crisis, and of course these executions that took place really inevitably became a sort of propagandistic sacrifice for the further conquest of Gaza. You just it's just something that I'm kind of tired of witnessing, the psychological warfare just continually recycled. But anyway, beyond that, I've mentioned before clearly the redevelopment plan, which fits in with the prosperity to the peace to prosperity through technocracy. So yeah, I think that'll probably do it. I can just pivot now to kind of what I wanted to talk about in the final portion of the stream here. But I think something that I discovered recently, and I had mentioned it yesterday, actually, in the early portion of the stream, was that there was this interesting article by Alex Constantine, right? But it really covers how the CIA was involved with Cass Elliot from the Mamas and the Papas, and that the Laurel Canyon scene really is what that points to. But it also points directly to the involvement with the Manson murders, right? And as far as a potential motivation for the reason that Sharon Tate had died, I had just I had read a long time ago, but I never really had any reason to kind of like bring it to the table. But once you read through this, you start to question a lot more about what was being done, and especially in terms of the drug trafficking that was very well established at the time. It was clearly a policy of the establishment, and this is the exact same time, of course, that the Jeffrey McDonald case was happening. The murders for that case happened about 6 months after the Sharon Tate murders, and so consider the fact that you have the cadaver connection and this widespread drug trafficking happening through the military bases at the time while we are in this major conflict in Vietnam. And so that kind of fits perfectly within the countercultural social engineering aspect of everything, and how they kind of can really manufacture counterculture. It's very strange, but the Manson family murders were specifically a psychological. There was a psychological implication at a national level, and I think kind of the ultimate evil falls within that same framework. But so it's interesting that 2 days before Cass Elliot died in London, and this is Cass Elliot again from the Mamas and the Papas, very very famous band at the time. That the House Judiciary Committee voted 27-11 to recommend the first article of impeachment against President Nixon for obstruction of justice. The second article of impeachment, abuse of power, and third, contempt of Congress, were passed on July 29th, 1974, the day that Cass Elliot suffered a fatal coronary. 4 years later, Who drummer Keith Moon would die from barbiturate overdose in the same flat. The executive branch took a fatal blow on July 16, 1973, when Nixon aide Alexander Butterfield sabotaged his boss by revealing in open congressional testimony the existence of secret White House tapes, which, by the way, that was by design as well. Alexander Butterfield was suggested to testify by specifically by Woodward, right? And Bob Woodward from Woodward and Bernstein. And he had military intelligence dual loyalty to Alexander Haig at the time. So this was all by design. But anyway, that's inside baseball with Watergate. Doesn't really matter at this moment. But still, Alexander Butterfield, a veteran Air Force reconnaissance pilot who flew in Vietnam, had been in charge of tactical charts for Defense Secretary Robert McNamara under President Johnson. In 1969, he gave up his commission to accept the post of security advisor to the Oval Office, offered by his old UCLA classmate, H.R. Haldeman, Nixon's chief of staff. In the mid-1960s, Butterfield had worked in the Pentagon under Knight of Malta Alexander Haig, whose advisor, Bob Woodward, left the DoD and took a job at the Washington Post 6 months before the Watergate scandal broke. By revealing the existence of the tapes, Butterfield, with an assist from the CIA, brought down the nation's chief executive. Chaos, Operation Chaos, and this is what I had mentioned yesterday, entered a hyper-operational phase coincident with Nixon's election to office. The late Mae Brussel, a mercurial encyclopedia of political research in Carmel, California, reached some startling conclusions in an unpublished manuscript entitled Operation Chaos. By August 1967, Special Operations Group went after the youth. By July 1968, Operation Chaos, identical to Chilean Chaos, went after the restless youth. Midsummer of 1969, 1 month before the Manson family massacres, Operation Chaos went into tight security mode. They had perfected enough LSD to cause every violent act or symptom associated with the violence in Los Angeles or at the Altamont Festival. It was identical to giving poison candy at Halloween. LSD was the moving force. the cause for the Sharon Tate LaBianca slaughters. It was fed at the Spawn Ranch for a steady diet. July 1968, explicit orders went out to proceed, accompanied with instructions to neutralize segments of our society, including those restless youth. By 1969, the Special Services Staff, the SSS, Special Services Staff of the FBI, combined with the Justice Department and with the CIA's Operation Chaos. August 1969 was the Sharon Tate LaBianca slaughter. What Manson called home was a relic of Hollywood's past. The Spawn Ranch, right? But the ranch had one more claim to historical significance. Next to George Spawn's property stretched the Krupp Ranch, owned by one of the wealthiest families in Nazi Germany, a ranking sponsor of Hitler's aggression and its accompanying atrocities. The Krupp Ranch has since been transformed into a blooming commercial Bavarian beer garden. Howard Hughes purchased some 500 acres of Krupp-owned land in Nevada after his move to Las Vegas. Manson, the aspiring neo-Nazi rock artist, and his family of tripping satyrs socialized with celebrity recording artists, especially Cass Elliott's entourage, off the Sunset Strip and Laurel Canyon. He lived for a year with Beach Boy Dennis Wilson, who would drown in 12 feet of water in 1983. Bobby Busalil, convicted for the torture murder of Gary Hinman, was a devotee of Manson. The rock group Love, founded by Busalil's musical companion Arthur Lee of the signature multicolored glasses, was not a band of laughing survivors. Since the Tate LaBianca murders, a curse has dogged their heels. Guitarist Brian McLean and bass player Ken Forsey are dead. Jay Cantrelli, born John Barbarous, a sax player and flutist, also presumed dead. At least this is the most probable conjecture. Johnny Eccles has disappeared and is also thought to be deceased. Michael Stewart, drummer, changed his name to conceal his identity, and his whereabouts are unknown. Arthur Lee, convicted in 1995 to 12 years at the Pleasant Valley State Prison in Coalinga, California, for firing a handgun into the air, is fiercely reluctant to discuss the group's past, and so are survivors of Love's many incarnations. But the prison sentence is unreasonably harsh, considering that a fan visiting Lee at his home on Mulholland Drive confessed to firing the pistol himself, and that the fan suffered such remorse over the conviction that he was stricken with a bipolar disorder and had to be hospitalized. William Canego, the fan, points out that the forensic test for gunpowder residue on Lee's hand was negative. I think Arthur had an incredibly unfair trial, Canego laments. It's almost not accurate to describe it as a trial. The death of Dennis Wilson was questioned by Mae Brussel in her weekly World Watchers International broadcast on Kazoo FM, KAZU FM, Monterey, California, on January 16th, 1984. There's an article in the San Francisco Chronicle. That said, Dennis Wilson was responsible for one of the group's darkest secrets. Quote, "Me and Charlie, we started the family." He said he'd founded the Manson family. He made a record with Charles Manson. On the 2020 album, Dennis Wilson is credited. Now, I remember on the Manson episode, Dennis Wilson let the Manson family live with them for quite some time. He was fucking some of Charlie's girls, and to the point to where they kept getting STDs, and they would have to go to the local clinic. And yeah, that was like, they called themselves the Golden Penetrators. I remember that. And so Dennis Wilson, of course, he's a member of the Beach Boys, right? But anyway, so on the 2020 album, Dennis Wilson is credited, of course, with on Charles Manson's album. Bill Oster was the fellow, and the story goes, man, like, it's ridiculous. Like, he claims that over time, he discovered that Charlie was actually aggressive and potentially violent. But it seems like that's not quite the accurate story here. But anyway, so Bill Oster was the fellow who allegedly owned the yacht where Dennis Wilson drowned. Now, Oster, He appeared to be clowning Wilson when he dove into 12 feet of water. I think, yeah. What the hell? He did not surface after the dive. Okay, I see. So he appeared to be clowning Wilson. Dennis Wilson appeared to be clowning, is the quote, when he dove into 12 feet of water. He did not surface after the dive. He poked his hand above and waved. I saw the body slip. I thought he was clowning. I knew he had to come up for air. The Los Angeles Herald said that his wife called at the boat at 4:30. That would be the exact time he was going under. A woman answered and she was kind of rude. She said, "We've got some trouble here," and slammed down the phone. That would be the exact time that he was bubbling and waving and nobody jumped in for him. And at 5:30, 1 hour later, according to another account, he was picked up. 2 days before the drowning, Wilson had signed into St. John's Hospital to be clean of alcohol and drugs. A man and a woman visited him. Wilson became agitated and signed out of the unit. He was taken immediately to the boat. Medical examiners found a gash on the drummer's forehead. The coroner said the gash didn't contribute to his death. He died as a result of drowning. He has a hit on the head and drowns in 12 feet of water. Wilson's friends check him out and supplied him with alcohol, and he has a hit on the head and drowns in 12 feet of water. He was buried at sea. This assures that there will be no autopsy after that bang on the head. He's fed to the sharks. That's the old Granada trip they're using. And there's no way now to ever know what caused that bang on his head or how deep it was. In Sharon Tate's home, there were video movies of military VIPs. I know there were. But who was on those tapes? They belonged to the LAPD. Would Dennis Wilson know who was on those tapes? He was close to that scene. Ed Sanders, who actually is a phenomenal source, wonderful author. He wrote a a wonderful book on the Process Church, really. But he's just one of the greatest investigators in that regard. But Ed Sanders notes that Manson met Abigail Folger, the wealthy coffee heiress found dead among the carnage on Cielo Drive at the home of Mama Cass Elliot. So that's very interesting. So Manson met Abigail Folger, the wealthy coffee heiress found dead among the carnage on Cielo Drive at the home of Mama Cass Elliot, which, yeah, it was also on Cielo Drive. Gibby, Maury Terry, author of The Ultimate Evil, discovered in his investigation of satanic cult connections to the Manson family that Gibby had more money than she knew what to do with. She was into, they call Abigail Folger Gibby. She was into finding herself and new directions, and she was always investing in things. Abigail Folger, daughter of Peter Folger, president of the coffee company in Innis, Pumaja, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, the youngest offspring of Salvadoran consul General Encarnacion Mejia and his wife Gertrude, doled out cash to Manson on occasion, then stopped. Manson turned against her when she refused to lay out any more bucks for him. When Manson lived in San Francisco, Abigail Folger loaned $10,000 to the Straight Theater at Haight and Cole Streets. Wow, so Haight-Ashbury and Cole Street, which is where the Process Church chapter was influencing Manson up in San Francisco on Cole Street. So Manson then lived on Cole Street on the same block as the Process Church of the Final Judgment. Get the fuck out of here. On September 21st, 1967, the Magic Powerhouse of Oz performed at the Strait in celebration of the Equinox of the Gods. The Manson family's Bobby Busilil, I don't remember how to pronounce this guy's name, was the lead guitarist at this August function. Folger also funded Timothy Leary, filmmaker Kenneth Anger, and the Process Church in the establishment of the Himalayan Academy, not far from the Esalen Institute. Oh my God, I'm gonna have to do an episode on the Esalen Institute. That was on the list for a minute. Let me write that down, actually, so I don't forget, because the Esalen Institute is basically the U.S. version of the Tavistock Institute, man. I mean, it honestly is. It's like the modern version. Yeah, so not surprised there. But so the Himalayan Foundation, this is all very interesting. But let's see. Oh geez. So this is nuts, man. So the Leary lab was chock-a-block with pricey brain scanning gear, oscilloscopes, and advanced bioelectronic hardware. Manson was a hanger-on at the Himalayan Foundation. In fact, he first encountered the process there, joined the openly satanic sect, according to Maury Terry, and later convened with the group in Mill Valley and at a dwelling in San Anselmo, occupied by a well-known personage aligned with the LSD scene. Both cities are in the Bay Area. Folger, a financier of the covert lab utilized by the CIA's Timothy Leary, knew another regular of Mama Cass's entourage, Bill Mincer. Oh my gosh, man. I should have read this when I did the process episode. So let's see. Bill Mincer, currently serving a life term for the murder of fledgling Hollywood producer Roy Radin, a partner in the Cotton Club. All right, here we go. The Cotton Club. This is nuts, man. This is all connected to to the process chapters in upstate New York and the ultimate evil and the divine 22 disciples from hell, or whatever the hell they call themselves. I can't remember now, but man. So, and Roy Radin, by the way, they had a lot of kind of like Roy Cohn upstate parties, man. Like very strange, man. I'm reading from the hold on, let me mark my place real quick because this is freaking me out over here, dude. But I'm reading from Alex Constantine's archive. He has this look up Alex Constantine, and the article is called "The CIA, Cass Elliot, Drugs, and the Reason Sharon Tate Died," and it's fucking amazing, man. But anyway, so let's see. Back here, the Esalen Institute, the Cotton Club, Roy Radin. That's so nuts. Yeah, again, I looked up producer Roy Radin. He's a Hollywood producer. You look up his he was having like these Roy Cohn parties up in upstate New York. And he was essentially murdered. I think he had been, producing snuff films and things of that nature. I think that's another reason that, if you remember, David Berkowitz said that those murders were being filmed from inside of a van where at least 3 people were manning a camera. Just insane. Yeah, Alex is a great source. Definitely check it out, brother. But anyway, so Roy Radin, he never lived to see the movie, produced by Robert Evans, a partner with the deceased in the film and a friend of Henry Kissinger. "I'm used to being around scuzzy people," Cass Elliot told her future husband, Donald von Wiederman, on the day they met. Guys with long, stringy hair and zits from not eating right, guys with needle marks on their arms, guys who rip me off every time I turn my back. The nucleus of this pathological parade was Cass. Naomi Cohen, born in 1941 and raised in Washington, D.C., a German baroness by marriage. Her second husband, 60s paparazzi journalist von Wiederman, was a German nobleman, heir to a Bavarian baron. What the hell? There's fucking paperclip connections here. Like I was aware that there were paperclip connections to Spawn Ranch, but I didn't realize that there were such deep paperclip connections to really Mama Cass specifically, which makes all the sense in the world. Bringing up Marita Lorenz recently, talking about how she was tasked with executing and assassinating Fidel Castro by the CIA. She's sent down there, and then she falls in love with them. And it's like the craziest story of all time. And she wakes up after becoming pregnant with Fidel Castro's bastard child. She wakes up and she's no longer pregnant. And the CIA brings her back and stations her at these black sites in America and domestically. It's one of the craziest stories ever. But her parents, her dad was an SS, right? A Nazi SS U-boat captain. I mean, like, and then she's brought over as this paperclip asset along with her family, raised and groomed in this environment surrounded by spooks, and then spends the later years of her life running an apartment complex that very much seems to deal in potential audiovisual blackmail for compromising people. Very strange, but it seems to like fall perfectly in line with it. All of these various, you know, uh, just strategic tools that we continue to see recycled through the playbook, And anyway, paperclip looming large, shouldn't be surprised. So her second husband, 60s paparazzi journalist von Wiedermann, German nobleman, heir to a Bavarian baron. Also, after his short-lived marriage to Cass, oh my God, irrepressibly manic, my God, sorry, multifarious penthouse staff writer, gay porn producer, former publisher of The Advocate, Los Angeles advertising magnate for a spell, artist, and novelist. Cass was the most polished vocalist in the Mamas and the Papas, sometimes described as America's first hippies. The quartet formed in New York City in 1963 around songwriter John Phillips. Holly Michelle Gillian Phillips, born in Long Beach, California on June 4th, 1945, gave up a modeling career to sing with the group and married him in 1962. The Journeymen, as they were initially known, also included Scott McKenzie, who would join the surviving Mamas and Papas in 1985. Cass moved with the group from the East Coast to Los Angeles in 1964, and they signed with Lou Adler's Dunhill label. The Mamas and Papas split up in 1968. Michelle Phillips set out on a successful acting career, appearing in Dillinger and Valentino. She was a regular on Knots Landing. Michelle married actor Dennis Hopper for 8 days in 1970. John Phillips and Dennis Doherty, the Papas, also went solo with mixed success. Cass Elliot, however, after a rocky start in Las Vegas, launched a highly successful career. She produced 7 albums and several singles before her death. Cass's, oh my gosh. Cass at the time of her fatal heart attack was, she was with Pick Dawson, then under investigation by Scotland Yard for international drug smuggling. Oh my gosh. Pick Dawson. Oh my God. Dawson was the son of Harrison Pickens Dawson II, scion of an affluent land-owning clan in the Bible Belt. Pick's father was also a respected economist, sent to Germany after World War II to assist in rebuilding the economy. Subsequently, he entered the American Diplomatic Corps and was assigned to the State Department as a Foreign Service attaché and supervisory commercial officer in Bonn until his retirement in 1970. He died on Christmas Eve, 1985. At the time of his father's death, Pick, who perished himself a year later from a heroin overdose, was living in London. Cass had recently wrapped up 2 triumphant weeks of sold-out performances at the London Palladium. The coroner's report was not conclusive. She probably choked to death, but there was also a possibility of heart attack. Donald von Wiedermann knew Cass as well as anyone alive. He spoke to her by telephone before and after she set off from London. She told him that she was in love, but didn't mention Dawson by name. When her death hit the headlines, Von Wiederman was immediately skeptical of the forensic report and had reason to suspect foul play. The phone rings. It's July 1974. My, says a cheery voice. How time flies when you're having sex. Cass is manic. She's leaving the next day for London. She's going to play the Palladium as a solo act, her lifelong dream. She tells me that she thinks she's in love, that her life is finally falling into place. I sense that she is holding something back. I have no idea what it is. A week later, she calls from London. She is a smash, critically acclaimed, selling out every night. I ask her about the new man in her life. She tries to change the subject, but then tells me that someone told her that Alan Carr, her newly hired manager, had paid her new boyfriend to be with her. She says it uncertainly, telling me she doesn't really know if it is true. I think this has to be the ultimate insult, but still she is upbeat. She says she has to go. The next day she is dead. The media screams to the world that she choked on a ham sandwich. Not a nice epitaph for someone who gave so much. I don't believe it for a minute. There are a lot of seemingly mysterious circumstances surrounding her death. According to the first accounts in the newspapers, no traces of drugs were found in her body, an improbable reality at the very least. The press says her address book is missing. Her jewelry is missing. Even the bracelets fused on her wrist for posterity. The media reports that she was alone when she died. She was never alone. Never. Unless she was alone with her daughter. Alan Carr claimed he knew nothing. A white lie at best. A malevolent secret at worst. Scotland Yard has to be forced to release the results of the autopsy. And those results are inconclusive, meaningless. In my mind, manipulated. The new and unknown man in her life does not come forward to mourn her. In his biography of Cass, John Johnson published 12 photocopies from her FBI file released after a FOIA request. The pages are almost entirely obscured by black ink. Hoover's bureau kept tabs on Cass at the request of Alexander Butterfield, who Johnson notes cryptically was obsessed with her. She reportedly has associated with drug addicts, the FBI report mentions, and individuals opposed to the president's Vietnam policy. One report marked urgent and confidential notes that Cass attended a fundraiser in Hollywood attended by Jack Nicholson and Ryan O'Neal, among other celebrities. The event was hosted by the Entertainment Industry for Peace and Justice Committee, EIPJ. The FBI memo gossips that between dates with Henry Kissinger, Mario Thomas also attended the EIPJ meet with Barry Diller. Tuesday Weld, Burt Lancaster, and Jane Fonda, among others, attended the fundraiser as well. Cass had political ambitions. I think that I would like to be a senator or something in 20 years, she told Mike Douglas. She attended a variety of Democratic Party functions, participated in a Madison Square Garden rally sponsored by Rose Kennedy. I saw in the Democratic Convention in Chicago that there were more people interested in what I was interested in than I believed possible. It made me want to work. There would be room in an organized movement of politics for me to voice myself. Paul Krasner, editor of The Realist, suspects that Cass was the target of the political foul play. Cass Elliot was a friend, he says. I believe she may have been killed. She knew an awful lot about the incredible criminal links between Hollywood and Washington and Las Vegas. She was also a friend of Sharon Tate's. On the night Bobby Kennedy was killed, Cass had dinner with Sharon and Roman Polanski at the home of film director John Frankenheimer in Malibu Beach. John Frankenheimer did The Manchurian Candidate. That is insane. Now, I knew that, but I didn't know Mama Cass was there. Interesting. Pathologists in London refused to specify the cause of death at a public hearing. They did, however, mutter fortuitously, what the hell? I don't even know what this word is. Hold on, let me look it up. It doesn't matter. However, that she may have choked to death. That was the implication. The faux ham sandwich legend. The faux ham sandwich legend began with Dr. Anthony Greenberg, a Belgravia physician and doctor to the stars who entered the flat, loaned to Cass by British singer Harry Nilsson, and thought, as he told the Daily Express, she appeared to have been eating a ham sandwich and drinking Coca-Cola while lying down, a very dangerous thing to do. She seemed to have choked on a ham sandwich. Dr. Greenberg's opinion failed to account for the fact that Cass had not bitten into the sandwich, as Inspector Kenneth Holm noted in his police report. But the most ludicrous explanation award went to Dr. Keith Simpson, whose autopsy detected a left-sided heart failure. She plainly had a heart attack, he claimed, to cries of outrage from the medical community that a section of Elliot's heart muscle had actually turned to fat, a coronary transmutation he attributed to stress. Johnson's post-mortem examination of a medical hoax. The conclusion was termed improper by a Vanderbilt University heart specialist immediately after it was made public. It is true that obesity is related to high blood pressure and stroke, but there's no correlation with a heart attack, disputed by Dr. George V. Mann. He's stating an old-fashioned dogma, a Victorian concept of fatty degeneration that has gone out in modern times. Old-time pathologists tend to look at deposits of adipose tissue, around the surface of the heart and associate it with a heart attack. But a heart attack is due to limitation of blood supply to the heart muscle, with the result that some of the muscle dies. Whatever the underlying cause, the verdict remained unchanged. Officially, Cass died of a massive heart attack at the age of 32. Why did Dr. Simpson reach into the 19th century and extract this long discredited theory to explain the death of Mama Cass? He was not a quack or a charlatan, despite superficial appearances to the contrary. Dr. Simpson, who died on July 21st, 1985, was among the most respected forensic pathologists in the world. In his lifetime, he was a professor of forensic medicine at the University of London and Oxford. He was a co-founder and president of the Association of Forensic Medicine, famed for postmortems in a number of high-profile homicides. In 1963, he was elected to the Royal College of Pathologists. Professor Simpson was the editor of Taylor's Medical Jurisprudence, a standard reference work. 40 Years of Murder. His autobiography was an international bestseller in the late 1970s. It's likely that Dr. Simpson performed more autopsies than any other forensic pathologist in the world, yet his analysis of the death of Cass Elliot was so blatantly stupid that less knowledgeable and experienced pathologists denounced it openly as medical flim-flam. How could he be so mistaken? Because Professor Simpson was not only a celebrated medical pathologist, he was also a political animal. The first forensic pathologist to be recognized by the Home Office, a consultant to corruption-riddled Scotland Yard. He could not have possibly believed his own diagnosis. He lied and was covering for someone, but who and why? The death certificate states that Cass Elliot died from natural causes. This conclusion is based on the erroneous autopsy report, so it isn't known whether her death was natural or not. Dr. Simpson covered up the true cause of death with his Victorian cardiac fantasia, and they say the cover-up proves the crime. Given the body count around Cass, most of them connected to the Laurel Canyon rock scene, the slaughters, torture, murders, overdoses, disappearances, corpses stuffed into car trunks, etc. Googling them is an all-day affair. It has to be considered that Cass was also murdered. Dr. Simpson invented a natural cause of death to conceal the true circumstances. The Church Committee hearings revealed in its discussion of the famed CIA heart attack gun that the CIA has developed a toxin that causes cardiac arrest, delivered via a tiny projectile that melts once the drug is taken into the bloodstream. Man, I remember watching the video of Frank Church being passed up. He's like, "Let me see it." They pass him up the gun with the cartridge of what they would use in the gun. It's very strange, and of what it was able to, and out acknowledging the fact that this will directly cause a heart attack to take place when it wouldn't otherwise have taken place, of course. So this is an explanation, right? However, unfeasible. This is an explanation, however unfeasible, given the circumstances that Dr. Simpson's fat transmutation hypothesis, given the circumstances, then Dr. Simpson's fat transmutation hypothesis, it is reinforced by his implausible claim that there were no drugs detected in Elliot's bloodstream at the time of death. Recall Donald Van Weiderman's skepticism. Cass, he knew, was always high. She took drugs on a daily basis, but Dr. Simpson was in a tight spot. If he even admitted to traces of drugs in her system, he would have had to list and quantify them. Elliot's blood samples would be subject to peer review. He was forced to deny that there was any trace of drugs in her system. If he included them in his report, there was a risk that the toxin used to kill her would have been detected on subsequent analysis. My gosh. So, we're almost through this. It is worthwhile, though. I think it's one of the craziest connections to the Manson family murders. So, he would have been called out, opening a can of worms with homicide on the label. But Simpson's explanation for the death of Mama Cass wasn't the only disingenuous moment in an otherwise illustrious career. His opinions concerning another mysterious, high-profile death, also with connections to heroin smuggling, was equally ludicrous. The death by hanging of Roberto God's banker Calvi. So Calvi, whose murder has been the subject of numerous investigative reports, was the chairman of Banco Abraciano. Banco Abraciano. The bank's largest shareholder was the Vatican. The bank had been overrun by the infamous Propaganda Due, or P2, Masonic Lodge, founded by Nazi collaborator Licio Gelli in 1966. So in consultation with the CIA, P2 and Operation Gladio, a NATO secret army, waged a war on socialists by committing acts of terror and blaming them on the left in certain areas. Under his tutelage, the bank laundered funds derived largely from the heroin trade. Oh man, this is starting to make sense. This falls into place with what I just covered, coming through Fort Bragg in 1969. In 1982, after $900 million vanished from the bank, Calvi fled to the UK. In a state of panic, he threatened to tell authorities everything he knew about the money laundering. Calvi was found hanging by a length of orange rope twisted into a lover's knot from London's Blackfriars Bridge, his pockets filled with bricks. Oh, man. Letters of consolation to offshore banks set up by Calvi were signed by Archbishop Marcinkus. Yeah, I think that's it. The powerful Chicago-born prelate and Vatican insider implicated in the scandal, but never interrogated by the authorities. Calvi's mentor was Michelle Sindona, poisoned by cyanide-laced coffee while sitting out a life term in prison for the 1986 murder of lawyer Giorgio Ambrosoli. Oh my God. Sindonia was a Knight of Malta and crony of Richard Nixon. There you go. Roberto Calvi took to his grave knowledge of payments made by major Italian companies to prominent political parties. Mafia Don Francesco Frankie the Strangler Di Carlo, has confessed that on June 16th, 1982, 2 days before the murder, he was assigned the hit. DiCarlo was directed to contact Giuseppe Pippo Calò, Cosa Nostra General. I don't know, Pippo, I don't know. But by the time DiCarlo contacted Calò, he told me not to worry, that the problem had been taken care of. DiCarlo, among the first mafia leaders to launder drug proceeds through the establishment banking system, is currently serving 25 years in prison for heroin trafficking. One day, I may write the full story, he told The Observer, but the real killers will never be brought to justice because they are being protected by the Italian state, by members of the P2 Masonic Lodge. They have massive power. They are made up of a mixture of politicians, bank presidents, the military, top security, and so on. This is a case that they continue to open and close again and again, but it will never be resolved. Man. Journalists who have written about P2 have also linked the lodge to not only the mafia, but the CIA, Knights of Malta, MI5, and a number of neo-Nazi groups. Oh, man. 2 inquests into Calvi's death were conducted. The first was presided over by London coroner Dr. David Paul in a marathon session lasting 10 hours and 20 minutes. In Mafia, Inside the Dark Heart, A.G.D. Moran writes of Dr. Simpson's role in the inquest. Dr. Paul kept the jury hearing evidence for 9 hours, summoned up for an hour, and then asked the jury to be quick about their verdict, giving them incorrect instructions about the application of an open verdict. They voted by a majority for suicide, but it was no surprise that the verdict was overturned on appeal and a second inquest ordered. The main witness at the first inquest was the famous forensic pathologist Dr. Keith Simpson. These were the days of eminence-based rather than evidence-based medicine, when a famous medical expert's opinion would be invariably believed. Simpson said that the death had occurred around 2 a.m., and the cause was asphyxia due to hanging. He did not opine as to the probability of either murder or suicide, but from the way that he presented the evidence, it seemed that he favored suicide. The second inquest lasted 2 weeks. That was certain. What was certain was that it would have been virtually impossible for Calvi himself to have reached that point on the scaffold, carrying 12 pounds of bricks, and to arrange his own hanging. Also, he could have saved himself to all the discomfort by staying in Chelsea cloisters and swallowing the hundreds of barbiturate tablets that were in his luggage. Much of the evidence for murder rests on the virtual impossibility of his having hanged himself. Dr. Keith Simpson was not a good liar. He offered up transparently false and misleading testimony at least twice in his career. Cass Elliot and Roberto Calvi lived worlds apart but shared 2 things in common: heroin and premature mortality. Cass's fiancée, Pick Dawson, peddled the opiate. Roberto Calvi laundered profits from its distribution. They both died under very peculiar circumstances. The fix was in. Dr. Simpson misrepresented the cause of death in both cases to draw attention away from sensitive subjects. Drugs, for instance. Many books have been written about the Manson murders. There have been differences of opinion, but on one point they all agree. The motive for the slayings involved drugs, and Cass was at the center of it all. Pick Dawson, heroin addict and drug dealer, was the first suspect in the slaughter at 10050 Cielo Drive. He sold drugs to Wojciech Frykowski and Jay Sebring, both of whom were murdered by the Manson family. Cass was a close friend of Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski. She lived across the road from victims Frykowski and Folger, socialized with both of them. She also knew Manson and his entourage. Vincent Bugliosi has written about the Hollywood connections at length in Helter Skelter. He is also the author of Reclaiming History, The Assassination of President John Kennedy, a revisionist account of the sniper fire in Dallas. Before the Manson murders, Bugliosi worked for the DA's office in Los Angeles, where he altered evidence to convict Sirhan for the Robert Kennedy assassination orchestrated by the CIA, a clutch of affluent right-wingers with ties to the John Birch Society and an assortment of neo-Nazi groups in Southern California. Helter Skelter is a cover-up no less disingenuous than Dr. Simpson's fat heart thesis and cooked testimony before the Calvi inquest. The explanation for Cielo Drive and a litany of related homicides isn't found in Bugliosi's book. Pick Dawson's father was a State Department foreign attaché, a common synonym for CIA officer. Manson murders blogger Phil Jahan, among others, has traced multiple CIA connections after reading widely about the case and piecing together the essential leads. Jahan notes that Jimi Hendrix, on more than one occasion, played live and recorded with the falsely accused Arthur Lee, lead vocalist of Love, the rock band that has fallen on very hard times since the Manson murders. Love's Gary Busey was a member of the Manson cult and is serving a life term for Gary Hinman's murder. Almost all of the rock stars of the late 1960s used to live in Laurel Canyon, including the band Love. Jahan writes, Frank Zappa, who promoted the use of LSD through his record Freakout, lived in the canyon, even though he never took LSD himself, allegedly. Frank Zappa's father used to work at the Aberdeen Proving Grounds back east. Do you really believe that Jimi Hendrix died while choking on his vomit, or Mama Cass Elliot choked on a ham sandwich? The logical explanation here is that the CIA hippies were the suppliers or promoters of the drugs to the rest of the crowd, including Pick Dawson, who recruited Wojciech Frykowski, Gibby Folger's paramour, as a frontman to introduce the LA rock star scene to a drug called methylene dioxyamphetamine, MDA for short, synthetic mescaline, a hallucinogenic compound with the street name the Love Drug. MDA, like LSD, was spun off by the MKUltra mind control experiments, another weapon in the chaos biochemical arsenal. John Marks, in The Search for the Manchurian Candidate, A History of MKUltra, reports that professional New York City tennis player Harold Blower died in 1953 during classified MDA experimentation overseen by the agency's Office of Scientific Intelligence. Blower was completely unaware that he had been used as a guinea pig, and for 22 years after his overdose, the cause of death was covered up by the state of New York and the CIA. CIA mafia connections were responsible for much of the bloodletting connected to Laurel Canyon in the 1960s, including the Tate LaBianca murders. Anyone alive at the time heard of the carnage, but the motive has always been hazy. During the Manson trial, Susan Sadie Glutz Atkins, the killer of Sharon Tate, testified that the motive was twofold. Payback, Busey, who recorded with payback for burning Manson follower Linda Kasabian on a $1,000 MDA deal. So that was one of the motives. Payback for burning Manson follower Linda Kasabian on a $1,000 MDA deal, and to free Bobby Cupid Busey, who recorded with Arthur Lee and sang backup on Zappa's LP Freakout, from imprisonment by copying the torture murder of Gary Hinman. The first motive for the murders, corroborated by a number of independent witnesses, connects directly to Pick Dawson, Mama Cass's paramour, and Frykowski's MDA supplier. Per the coroner's report, Frykowski and Folger both had MDA in their blood when they were killed. Atkins, in volume 180, page 23,049 of the trial transcripts, recalls that Kasabian told her that she purchased the bad MDA at the Polanski Tate residence. Dawson was the MDA supplier to this crowd, and he frequented the house at the invitation of Frykowski and Folger, who house sat while Polanski and Tate were off filming in Europe. Interesting. That must have been when they frequented the Roman chapter of the Process Church leading up to the deaths. Tex Watson, and Linda Kasabian paired up in the months prior to the murders, according to Bousselil. Kasabian scored the MDA from a partner of Dawson's, Billy Doyle, another of Cass Elliott's boyfriends. She was engaged to him for a brief period in 1969 in a familiar face of the Polanski household. Bill Doyle. All right. So if Watson and Kasabian sought payback, it was Dawson and Doyle who should have been taken out, not Sharon Tate and her house guests. What does Nixon aide Alexander Butterfield and his obsession with Cass Elliot have to do with any of the above? A year after her apparent heart failure in London, Pentagon whistleblower L. Fletcher Prouty told NPR's Daniel Shore that Butterfield had been the CIA's spy in the White House. The Nixon aide denied it, but Randall B. Wood's shadow warrior, William Egan Colby in the CIA, argues convincingly that he was a CIA mole. It was Butterfield who suggested to Nixon at their very first meeting that a tape machine be set up in the Oval Office. Butterfield was also one of Crimes of Patriots author Jonathan Quitney's sources on CIA heroin trafficking and money laundering at the Nugan Bank in Australia. Holy shit. Nugan Bank, man, that's connected to the Nazis. The financing of Hitler, that's crazy. So it is certain that he was privy to agency involvement in the drug trade. Absolutely. Man. Let's see. It was Butterfield who directed the FBI to... Wait, hold on. Mae Brussel has gone so far as to suggest that Butterfield was instrumental in the founding of Nugan. Interesting. It was Butterfield who directed the FBI to open a file on Cass Elliot. Her death on the very day that articles of impeachment against Nixon passed in the House is telling. Nixon, according to Alfred McCoy in The Politics of Heroin in Southeast Asia, lobbied Congress on behalf of PepsiCo for approval of a bottling plant near the Mekong River in Laos that served as a front for the importation of acidic anhydride, the key precursor in the production of heroin. Wow. So PepsiCo, a fake bottling plant in Laos that served as a front for the CIA's importation of the key precursor in the production of heroin. Oh, that makes all the sense in the world. So the Pepsi plant did not produce one bottle of soft drink, but it was Air America's primary cargo supplier of the opiate for import to the United States and elsewhere. Wow. So Air America was obviously connected to Epstein and Wexner, and then is handed off to the Finders cult, who are obviously, I think, not only involved with trafficking human beings and procuring children for internationally for international purposes. Legitimately, the Chinese embassy, it was proven they had private peer-to-peer networks set up, for that specific reason, for ordering illegal human trafficking. Like it's really insane, honestly. But anyway, so Air America is involved, CIA cut out, but during this period, Nixon called for an escalation of the war in Laos. Air America, of course, was a CIA front, and Cass's fiance, Pick Dawson, he dealt heroin. So he also sold MDA, the CIA mind control drug. The fact that he was the first dealer in Los Angeles to do so links him once again to the agency that had developed the drug as a biowarfare weapon aimed at America's restless youth. Thus, Butterfield's obsession with Mama Cass Elliot. If anyone knew where the bones were buried, it was she, at a time when the CIA was cleaning house and went so far as to drive Nixon from office very deftly. without exposing his ties to scandals much deeper than illicit wiretaps, hush money, and milk funds, including political assassinations and heroin importation. It was an opportune time for CIA chaos agents to live and let Cass die. To live and let Cass die. That's a great line. Especially with Frank Church beginning to stick his big nose where it didn't belong. Dr. Simpson, the famed forensic expert, delivered his diagnostic quack song and dance over her body, a role he would reprise when P2's Roberto Calvi threatened to blow the whistle on the laundering of heroin profits at Banco Ambrosiano. Vincent Bugliosi could be counted on to tie up loose ends with a perception management bestseller and movie made for television. Nixon himself attempted to scuttle exposure of chaos and its role in the Manson case by declaring in the midst of the trial and on national television that the cult leader was guilty. Nixon was an attorney. He was completely aware what his widely publicized statement could prejudice the jury, that the charges might well be dismissed as a result of his statement. On August 4th, 1979, he was forced to retract. Tricky Dick's attempt to undermine the Manson trial didn't work out, but he needn't have worried. The many chaos ties to Laurel Canyon's colorful youth, Mama Cass Elliot, the fall of love, the Manson murders, LSD, heroin, MDA, a long list of dead witnesses, never did make headlines, as his own horror stories eventually did. Alex Butterfield could rest easy. Who was to know? That's that on on that Alex Constantine article. I know it was a longer one, but man, I had never really gotten to go all the way through it except for one time, and just having it cross back through my over my radar yesterday. I figured it would be something that would be fun to bring to the table. Plus, it falls perfectly in line with the Gladio connections that we're outlining for, the upcoming TFH appearance and things of that nature. Brings in the paramilitaries. It brings in the Manson murders, which of course ties directly to my most recent solo episode, which again was a sort of Manson imitation crime within 6 months of the Tate and LaBianca murders. So it's it only makes sense, really. And I had and yeah, it definitely, especially considering that both of these, like the Manson murders and the McDonald murders, were both, I honestly believe, they both kind of overshadowed the reality of the drug trafficking, well-established drug trafficking taking place at the time. And that was not going to be exposed to the public, right? And so I believe that the priority became whatever is necessary to make sure that, right, the reality of this well-established covert operation never sees the light of day in public perception. And yeah, they succeeded. They achieved their goal. I mean, all we remember is Helter Skelter, man. And thank God that Tom O'Neill's book Chaos is getting a lot more traction and a lot more exposure since the Rogan appearance. But until then, there really hasn't ever been an alternative narrative or a theory that's been in circulation in the mainstream to any extent. And that is very unfortunate, considering how clearly obvious it is that the official narrative behind the Manson murder's motivation just falls apart. Like they all knew each other. They all they all hung out in the same circles. They were all practicing occult black magic as well, which is something, yeah, man. It wasn't just drugs, right? But anyway, man, I had so much more I planned on talking about. I spent so much time just running my mouth about some things that I didn't quite prepare to discuss, but I think that's just the nature of being tired at some points, and I get a little schizo-brained. But I gotta say, I think that was worthwhile bringing to the table, especially just knowing the playbook as we do. But anyway, guys, don't look definitely definitely remain skeptical in regard to the H5N2, the bird flu. Just do your best. Dystopian biosecurity is on its way, and it's no solution. It's a pivot to totalitarian technocracy, and we must remain vigilant. That, I think it boils down to just not falling into, these predetermined outcomes, these traps that have been so sophisticated as far as how they've been laid to kind of provoke and attract our interest. But yeah, hey, I appreciate all you guys, man. Nothing but love. Nothing but love. Hey, I appreciate you, brother. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad you learned something, man. I'm doing my best. But yep, as always, I'm just very grateful right now. I think that there's plenty of room for optimism, you know what I mean? And The Psychology of Totalitarianism by Matthias Desmet. I will check it out. I feel like I've heard of it. I'll check it out for sure. But yeah, I have a few things that I'm thinking about. I'm workshopping. I kind of want to get back going quickly so it won't take me as long and I don't have to. So, man, I spend a lot of time when it comes down to it, just sitting in one spot reading, and so it's a good thing. And, believe me, I think it's important and valuable, but man, I start to feel like I'm not a shell of a human being. It's kind of hilarious, but anyway. So, but yeah, I do think there's a lot of room for optimism for the future. I think the world is a beautiful place. I think that the Great Awakening is happening. It's just kind of we have to account for the attempted derailment, and I think that's where people are unfortunately a little too naive, and they fall for the false prophets, man. They start worshiping political actors. Don't listen to their words, watch their philosophy in action, watch their legislation. Remain skeptical, man. They're not here. No one's coming to save you, man. Like as Sam Tripoli likes to say. And I think it's one of the just beautiful, beautiful statements. Couldn't be more accurate. So, hey, I appreciate you guys, honestly, man. And so anyway, I'll be here tomorrow for sure. I think Jose and I are going to. Yeah, TV addiction is a real thing, man. But I'm sure we're gonna get back into some more Gladio stuff. I think we were gonna finish covering the long form Dutroux article, and how dare you say Sam Tripoli sucks, sir? No, I got nothing but love for Sam, man, because he has done a lot for me. He opened the door for me. Not only was I a huge fan, loyal to the foil, part of the swarm for a long time. He deserves more credit. He's a lot more valuable than people realize. But yeah, beyond that, he's just a good person. And I mentioned it yesterday, the law of abundance, right? That's a beautiful mentality, something that we should all try and implement in our daily lives more often. And when you have no sense of purpose, you have no passion and outlet for that in your life, it's very hard to be proud of someone else's success. You know what I mean? Like you get into this poisonous mindset, and it's really a negative thing. It's not it doesn't lead to anything worthwhile for your own personal existence, right? And so I myself am just more grateful than ever, but I also think that I'm pursuing something more worthwhile than ever before. So that kind of comes with the territory. But yeah, so check out talk about Sam for a second. Just check it reminds me to kind of plug my Patreon because I'm trying to incentivize people to support the show a little bit more often. So in doing so, it kind of fell into my lap that Sam wanted to yeah, it's dark and heavy, lift it up, but don't let it crush you. Absolutely. That is the way. But yeah, definitely check out the Patreon because Sam, Brad Bankley, and I have been doing a show called Whatever This Is. And we put out a couple episodes already, but they're behind the paywall. But again, I think the lowest level is $3 tier. So you can still access it for the $3 tier. But anyway, any support whatsoever, nothing but appreciation and gratitude. But man, thank you, Jake. Honestly, brother. But anyway, guys, I probably should jet. I got plenty to do, and I'm starving to death. So, but yeah, we're gonna get dangerous for sure. I'm excited for that. But yeah, anyway, guys, check out the Patreon, support the Underclass podcast if you can. Otherwise, sorry, who is Sam? Go listen to the Tinfoil Hat podcast. Yeah, Sam Tripoli. But anyway, guys, yeah, keep in mind, Jose and I are going back on TFH on Wednesday, I believe. And then I think we're both going on William Ramsey's show this week as well. So which should be a busy week, but it should be a lot of fun. But check out all the interviews, follow all our work, support the shows, and yeah, reach out to me, man. If you guys have any like articles or anything you think that might be, in my realm of interest, send it my way. I would love to either bring it to the show and we can kind of work through it, or yeah, just I'm always open and looking for any new like avenue of information. So nothing but love for all you guys, man. Have a wonderful Monday, and I'll catch you in the morning.